These are probably the most inexperienced miners we've ever helped. Their goal of 100 ounces is unobtainable, the way they're running.
No one imagined Alaska was hiding a secret this big. When Freddy and Juan rolled out their dredge, they expected nothing more than another tough week of digging and grinding through pay dirt. But within hours, something happened that froze the entire crew in disbelief. Gold, thick, heavy, and unbelievably pure, started flooding out of the gravel like a golden river. $31.5 million worth of nuggets and flakes poured out, but that wasn't the real shock. The ground beneath them suddenly gave way just enough to reveal something far older and far stranger. Hidden beneath the dirt was a sealed mine, timbers, beams, and a blocked entrance that looked like it hadn't been touched in over a century. The air around it felt colder, heavier, almost like someone had buried it on purpose and walked away forever. And Freddy's first reaction, this isn't natural. Someone hid something down here. This isn't just gold. This could be the beginning of a buried story no one was meant to uncover. If you want to know what they found behind that sealed entrance, make sure to like the video, share it, and don't forget to subscribe, because the real reveal is just getting started. Out here, in the unforgiving cold of Alaska's mining country, every swing of a machine comes with risk, and sometimes with revelation. Freddy Dodge had spent his life chasing gold across rivers, gulches, and forgotten valleys. He knew the language of the earth, where it hid, how it shifted, how it lied. But on this day, something felt off. The dredge was tearing deeper than usual, chewing through layers of rock and sediment as if the land itself was thinning out, making room for something else. Then it happened. Juan noticed it first. The gold wasn't scattered like normal. It was building up in tight pockets, collecting in heavy clusters deep below the pay layer as if trapped against something solid. Not rock, not clay, something placed there. He raised his hand, signaling the machine operator to kill the engine. The hum of metal grinding earth faded, replaced by a silence that carried more weight than the roaring dredge ever could. Freddy stepped forward, boots sinking into the wet silt. He bent down, rubbed the dirt between his fingers. The texture was wrong. This wasn't river-settled gravel. It was packed, layered, compressed with intention. He'd seen soil like this before, when prospectors buried illegal shafts to keep others away, or when someone sealed something they never wanted found. Juan gave the order, his voice low but firm. No machinery, no noise, hand tools only. What followed wasn't digging. It was excavation, slow, careful, almost reverent. Every shovel struck the ground like it might wake something sleeping beneath. The color of the earth changed from mottled browns to a darker, colder tone, thick and unmoved for generations. Then came the first fracture in the mystery. A glint, not of gold, but of something older. A shard of splintered wood jutting through the mud, worn down by time, but undeniably shaped by human hands. Beside it, the dull, corroded curve of rusted metal. Not debris, not accident, structure. No one said a word. The crew, hardened by decades of strain and survival, froze in place. The wind stopped moving. Even the water pooling around their boots felt still, as if the land itself was holding its breath. One of the men stepped back, eyes wide, not in fear, but in recognition. Everyone on that crew knew the difference between nature and intent. Freddy brushed aside another layer of silt, revealing more wood beneath. Thick beams, shaped, cut, buried, and not by landslide or erosion. This was covered, hidden, with a precision that sent a chill crawling up the spine. Juan didn't look up when he spoke. This wasn't formed by time, he said quietly. Somebody put this here. And just like that, the gold, the $31.5 million worth of it, was no longer the headline. It was a breadcrumb, a lure, a signpost left behind by hands long gone or long watching. But hidden structures come with history, and history comes with ownership, with greed, with blood. And while the crew stared at what they'd uncovered, none of them could know yet. This discovery wouldn't just test their skills, it would test their loyalties, their limits, and the cost they were willing to pay to see what waited in the dark beneath their feet. Because this wasn't the end of the story, it was the door to the next one, still sealed, still silent, and about to be opened. The deeper they dug, the more the land began to whisper its secrets. What started as splintered wood and rusted metal soon transformed into something undeniable, something crafted, measured, and buried with purpose. Every layer of mud scraped away didn't just clear the earth, it peeled back time. By late afternoon, the full structure had emerged. Thick beams of aged timber stood locked in place, not rotten, not fallen, but built. Set at angles only experienced hands would know how to shape. This wasn't the work of a desperate drifter or outlaw prospector chasing dust. This was industrial, engineered, funded by men with means, or men with something to hide. The entrance was framed with iron so old it had fused into the rock around it, sealed by a collapse that wasn't caused by accident, but intention. The way the stones sat, the way the beams locked against each other, it was a burial, not a ruin. Freddy stepped forward first. His gloved hand slid across the timber, tracing grooves worn into the wood. They weren't made by modern chainsaws or hydraulic tools. These cuts were older, hand-forged, deliberate, the mark of a workforce that built in silence and never returned. For a moment, it was just him and the wood. No cameras, no crew chatter, no roar of machinery. Just the quiet weight of history pressing into his skin. Then the documentary crew moved in, the lens capturing every inch of the discovery. The air filled with rapid breaths, hushed words, and the subtle dread that comes when a secret finally sees daylight and looks right back at you. Juan didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. One glance told the crew everything. This was bigger than a mining hit. He pulled his radio close, calling in reinforcements, but even his voice carried uncertainty. Not fear, but respect, because whatever this was, someone had gone to great lengths to seal it away. Freddy crouched near the entrance, brushing off another layer of packed silt. His light caught a corner of metal wedged beneath the beams, ironwork shaped by techniques long abandoned. The kind used before blueprints and permits, back when power didn't come from legality, but legacy. And that raised a new question. Who built this, and who buried it? Old mining companies, lost expeditions, wealthy families who carved profits from the land and erased their footprints afterward, or something even older, something never documented because it was never meant to be spoken of. The men exchanged glances, but no one dared speculate out loud. Not yet. The gold had drawn them in, but this was something else. Something buried not to be forgotten, but to be protected. And if someone sealed it, did someone also guard it? Because finding a door is one thing. Opening it, knowing someone once feared what was inside enough to lock it away, is something entirely different. And the moment that seal is broken, history won't stay buried anymore. What waits behind that entrance won't stay silent for long. The crew doesn't know it yet, but the real battle isn't with the Earth. It's with the past that's about to wake up. And in the next chapter, that past starts answering back. Night came early to camp, but no one slept. The gold they'd pulled from the riverbed, $31.5 million worth of it, should have been the headline, the celebration, the victory. Instead, it sat in sealed cases under armed watch, overshadowed by a discovery that didn't belong on any modern claim, any government record, or any mining map ever written. Freddy and Juan moved into the operations tent, laying out everything they had: historic mining charts, geological surveys, prospecting archives reaching back nearly 2 centuries. They combed through property ledgers, expedition logs, abandoned claims, and forgotten dig sites once whispered by old-timers around campfires. Nothing matched. Not a single map showed a shaft, a structure, or even a rumor of activity in that valley before the gold rush began. And yet, the timbers they uncovered were older, some cut with hand tools used before industrial expansion ever touched Alaska's frontier. That meant one thing. The mine wasn't just hidden, it was erased. Juan stared at a faded survey sheet from the late 1800s, tracing his finger along a blank stretch of terrain where the sealed entrance now sat. "This isn't oversight," he muttered. "This was removed. On purpose." Freddy didn't respond, but the look in his eyes said everything. He'd seen mines abandoned for danger, for debt, for death, but never one that vanished from history. The questions grew heavier by the hour. Who built the tunnel if it predates the documented rush? How did they transport the beams, the iron, the manpower needed to carve it out? And more importantly, who had the authority to bury it? And why? The crew gathered around the table as Juan pulled up aging census records and shipping manifests, searching for any sign of an undocumented operation. What they found instead were gaps, missing names, missing years, missing trails of ownership that should have existed if the valley was ever touched. That silence spoke louder than evidence. And then, the most chilling question of all: how did tens of millions in gold end up stacked above a sealed structure that no history book dared mention? Was the gold runoff a sign of a lost mother lode beneath? Or was it placed there, left behind as a warning or a marker by those who sealed the shaft? As the lantern light flickered against the canvas walls, the camp shifted from excitement to unease. Some of the crew whispered about lost syndicates, secret expeditions, and families who built fortunes in the shadows before maps and governments claimed the land. And if this was their work, then digging further might not just uncover history. It could expose something people once killed to protect. Freddy glanced at the sealed crates of gold stacked against the wall, suddenly less like treasure and more like an invitation someone never meant them to accept. But unanswered questions have a way of turning men restless. And by dawn, one truth became clear. This wasn't just a mine. It was a buried decision, made by powerful hands for reasons long forgotten or deliberately concealed. And now that it's been found, someone or something tied to that past may not let it stay uncovered. The next move would change everything. Ready for the next segment? Morning broke cold and silent over the valley, but the ground around the sealed entrance felt alive, almost aware of the eyes fixed on it. The crew formed a rough circle around the buried doorway, each man carrying his own version of the truth, his own fear, his own hunger. What they'd found could rewrite history or erase them from it. Freddy stood closest to the timbers, his breath fogging in the air as he studied every inch of the structure. The wood was aged, but not broken, weathered, but not weakened. Someone had built this to last. not to be discovered. Behind him, voices clashed in heated whispers that grew louder with every passing minute. Some of the men were convinced this was a lost motherlode, an untouched deposit sealed off by miners who never made it out. To them, opening the tunnel wasn't just an option, it was a duty. They spoke of opportunity, legacy, the kind of wealth that could change generations. But others felt something different, a weight, a warning. They'd seen too many stories buried under gold and blood to trust what waited in the dark. They believed the tunnel wasn't abandoned. It was locked, not lost, but hidden, maybe for reasons no one alive could guess. Juan, caught between both sides, stepped back and made the call no one wanted to admit was necessary. He contacted a geologist, someone who could assess the risk no miner wanted to calculate in the dark, not just for safety, but for truth. While they waited, Freddy traced the grooves in the timber again, noticing the metal fittings embedded deep in the structure. These weren't random boards, hammered together by desperation. This was engineered, designed, concealed with intention. The documentary cameras captured everything. The rising tempers, the whispered curses, the glances that revealed more fear than anyone would speak out loud. The crew wasn't just arguing about a door in the ground. They were fighting over what came next and who would control it. One of the younger miners broke the silence first, his voice cracking with a mix of hope and terror. What if it's not a mine at all? What if it's a vault, another shot back, or a tomb? That word stayed in the air like smoke. Arguments flared about ownership, about history, about rights and risk. Some spoke of treasure, some of curses, some of legal claims, and families who might surface if the wrong secret was dug up. Greed clashed with caution, curiosity battled fear. And in that storm, betrayal waited quietly in the wings. Because when millions sit beneath your boots, or something that once justified sealing a mountain shut, not everyone on a crew stays loyal. Finally, as the sun dipped and shadows stretched across the entrance, a decision rose from the chaos, not from agreement, but from inevitability. They wouldn't open it today, not yet, but they wouldn't walk away either. Whether it held gold, bodies, records, or something older than the maps that pretended it never existed, one truth had taken hold of every man standing there. Whatever was buried in that tunnel wasn't going to stay buried much longer. And by the time they broke it open, the real danger wouldn't come from what was inside. It would come from each other. The next step would draw lines no one could erase. The camp was alive with a nervous energy unlike anything the crew had ever experienced. After days of uncovering timber, rusted iron, and layers of earth, the sealed entrance was no longer just a curiosity. It was a challenge, a temptation, and a warning all at once. Freddy and Juan knew that before they could take a single step inside, caution wasn't optional. It was survival. They called in specialists, engineers with state-of-the-art scanning equipment capable of mapping the unseen, and slowly a picture of the underground began to emerge. The readings sent chills through the entire crew. Void after void stretched beneath the surface, forming chambers that seemed deliberately carved, interconnected shafts, twisting like veins through the mountain, and metal reflections that no one could explain. This wasn't just a mine. It was a network, a hidden labyrinth built with skill, precision, and purpose. Every new scan deepened the mystery and amplified the stakes. Cameras captured the flurry of activity as safety rigs were assembled, oxygen tanks checked, ropes tested, and lights threaded into the entrance. Every detail mattered. A single misstep could collapse a chamber, crush equipment, or worse. As the crew worked tirelessly, tension simmered just beneath the surface. Ambition and fear danced in equal measure. Every man felt the weight of history pressing down on him. That night, while the campfire flickered against the cold, Juan spoke directly into the camera, his voice quieter than usual. "There's something wrong about this tunnel," he admitted. "It feels like we're disturbing something that wasn't meant to be found. Every fiber of me wants to turn back, but we've come too far." His eyes scanned the dark mouth of the mine, and for a moment, the bravado of a seasoned miner gave way to a rare vulnerability. Freddy, meanwhile, stood by the entrance, tools in hand, scanning the shadows for the first hints of danger. Every crack, every shift in the timber, every faint echo carried a story of ambition, of secrecy, and perhaps betrayal, long buried. He knew the descent wouldn't just test their skill, it would test their trust in one another. When millions of dollars, history, and human curiosity collide, even the closest crews can fracture. Morning arrived in a cold, grey haze. The cameras were ready, recording every heartbeat, every breath, every calculated step. Freddy gathered the men, his voice steady but heavy with anticipation. "This is it," he said. "We go in together. We find out what's inside. And we don't turn back until we've seen it all." As the first beams of light hit the sealed timber, ropes rattled and metal groaned under the strain of preparations. It became clear this wasn't just the beginning of a mine exploration. It was the opening chapter of a story that would test loyalty, ambition, and the very limits of human courage. The gold, the secrets, the betrayals, they were all waiting just beyond that threshold. And as Freddy stepped forward, hammer in hand, the tunnel seemed to exhale, a silent acknowledgement that the past was awake. What they would find inside wouldn't just rewrite history, it would challenge every truth they thought they knew. The descent had begun, and nothing would ever be the same.